display one award in my house, and it says Artist of the Year.
It's crowded on the weekdays.
Abingdon Elementary, 97 and 98. Thank you. My next crowning academic achievement was in high school when I was the first person at my high school, this is how long ago this was, to get a perfect score on the science SOL. And I think those two awards sort of tell the story by omission, because my grades dropped precipitously starting in middle school, and I don't know if I ever actually got an A in a science class. I do remember the grade I got in one class. So my dad is the world authority on 18th century vegetables. He started the Colonial Garden program at Colonial Williamsburg. He's written all these books. He's the guy in that world. My mother does landscape designs, and she does, native herbaceous plants and pollinators and butterfly gardens and cool stuff. And she's designed for like Busch Gardens and the state fairgrounds and all these millionaires, like Jimmy Carter's press secretary, I think, or something like that. I took botany in college, and I got a D, which is still better than the grade that I got in ballroom dancing. I failed ballroom dancing, which I don't think is reflective of my dancing abilities. It's not that I broke the instructor's toes or anything. I just never showed up for a single day of ballroom dancing. All this is because when I was a kid, we really didn't know what to do about ADD. It's gotten a lot better now, which I'm really glad of, because it is very hard to describe to someone who hasn't lived with it what it's like to fight with your brain for something that you know how to do, that's easy for you to do, and that you want to do, and you just can't do it. Maybe in school you've got multiplication tables, and you know that stuff backwards and forwards. It's a 5-minute job for you because you learn stuff like you already knew it. But the next day, class comes around, you've agonized about it all night, and you haven't done it. The joke is that ADD kids are distractible, right? Squirrel. But it's not really like that. The best analogy I've been able to come up with is that it's like holding two like poles of a magnet together, positive to positive. And one is just things you need to do, and one is your mind. And they just don't want to go. But eventually, the biggest obstacle to getting things done becomes not the ADD itself, but the shame. When this first starts happening, you're confused. You think, this is easy. Why am I not able to do this? But as you continue to fail at things that are easy for you, you start to really wonder, how worthless am I? You become avoidant because just the topic of things you need to do has become painful for you. Yeah, the other side of ADD is actually hyper-focus. So you miss meals and nights of sleep, teaching yourself to code in Python or do 3D computer modeling, which are not the things that you need to do, but they're things that your brain will just completely zero in on. A lot of kids you'll see will lie to you about how much they've got done just to get you off their back so they don't have to think about it. A lot of kids will self-medicate in some way. Some things make it easier not to think about it. Some things, stimulants, methamphetamines, they actually interact with the ADD brain in a different way. They can actually settle it down. Eventually you stop showing up. It's easy, but you can't do it, so why bother? It's also very difficult in a family. If you're a parent and you have this kid who is clearly so bright, but is just not getting it done, you have to wonder, how am I failing my kid? How have I messed up my kid? My parents are both very loving and supportive, but I remember getting a report card home from high school one time, and my dad saying, well, you'll just never go to college now. I have a memory of my mother getting so frustrated and throwing the chair in my bedroom and it breaks. And I don't know if that memory is real, because I used to have a lot of nightmares like that too. So, about 6 years into my 4-year degree, Dad was wrong. I went to way more college than most people go to for a bachelor's degree. About 6 years into my 4-year degree, something had to give, and I don't know exactly what switch flipped in my brain that made me able to do things that I wasn't able to do before, to start talking about it again, but I think it was the survival instinct. You know, I think at that time, on some level, I understood that I was going to be trapped, and I don't mean trapped in Southwest Virginia, where I was living at the time, which I really love, and I don't mean trapped in blue-collar jobs, which I was really enjoying, and I don't mean trapped as a college dropout. I mean trapped in the shame. So to paint the picture, you know, all my friends had graduated and moved on at the time, so I didn't really have anyone to room with anymore, so I just had to find the cheapest place to live that I could, which turned out to be a retirement home that had closed, and it wasn't like a nice one, and the farmer who owned the land around it just bought the retirement home, and when I moved in, there were still like the big old metal frame crank-up medical beds in the rooms, and in the basement there were like cans of potted meat and boxes of clothing, I guess from dead people. So around this time, I took a semester off of school. It wasn't going to be up to me that much longer whether I stayed in school anyway. When I came back, I started with community college. I was taking a night class while I was working during the day. And most importantly, like I say, I was able to start talking about it. I got help. I went to therapy. I started taking 2 drugs. One was for ADD, one was for depression. I actually years later got my therapist's notes, and as far as I can understand them, it looks like he'd actually ruled out depression, which I take to mean him deciding, like, this kid probably doesn't have depression. His life is just depressing, so let's get him over the hump and get him out of here. And that's exactly what happened. It was around this time that I met and fell in love with what I do today, which is local community journalism. And I have a job today that if I had $1 million, I would do exactly what I do right now. I have $0 and I do exactly what I do, but that's beside the point. The point is, I say all that to tell you this. When I see a kid who just isn't getting their stuff done, who like almost spitefully just refuses to do the basic things that I need them to do, who maybe even lies to me about how much they've got done just to get me off their back, I try to be a little more patient and a little more understanding, because I recognize that kid. And with a little time and a little help, maybe they'll be okay. Maybe we'll be okay. Thanks for listening.